Whether you're home or away, stay connected to your team with T-Mobile, the network that covers 99% of people in America. They've been investing billions to light up their best network ever. From your backyard to a sold-out stadium, get T-Mobile's best coverage yet. Plus, with T-Mobile, you get a price lock guarantee, so they won't raise the rate of your talk, text, and data, ever. There's never been a better time to switch. Visit your local T-Mobile store today. Coverage not available in some areas. Price lock exclusions like taxes, fees, select promos, and third-party services apply. See T-Mobile.com.
Hey everyone, welcome to The Final Four is Not on the Schedule. I'm your host Eric, alongside with expert analyst Rod. Thanks for joining us on the best MSU basketball podcast featuring in-depth recruiting, game matchup, and post-game analysis. We dive deep to give you the best tools to enjoy the Spartans and impress your friends and family. Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod, here reporting in from blustery, now snowy Chicago. After Michigan State's disappointing 68-58 loss in their first round, which was the quarterfinals against number 13 seed Ohio State. Before we begin, I just want to thank all of you who support the show. If you want to support the show, you head on over to tffinots.com/support. There you can give one-time gifts via PayPal or Venmo, or a recurring monthly donation through Patreon. This is for our family. We've been sort of spoiled in the Big Ten tournament. This is our fourth, I guess we've gone to. We went to the first one at the United Center, which for us was when Michigan State won with Cassius Winston. And then the next year, we got to Indianapolis, watched half of one game, and then they called off the entire thing as COVID ended everything. Then we went, and Iowa won it all last year, which, as regular listeners know, my wife's an Iowa fan. And so then we saw only one loss. Michigan State ended up losing in the semifinals to Purdue. And so we only saw our team lose one time. And then this year, where neither team, not only do neither win a game, but they both got wiped out by the same team, which is kind of strange. The 13th seed Ohio State Buckeyes. I guess looking over this was a poor defensive effort, even worse shooting effort or production by Michigan State. And we always talk about they need to hit the threes. They didn't hit any hardly today, and they were just. I guess, you can say, well, maybe they're a little sleepy that Ohio State had played a couple games, but it was beyond that because Michigan State came out okay to start the game. They're up 7-2, I think, or even 9-2. And then just the wheels kind of came off and they just weren't able to get anything going offensively. And Ohio State was hitting shots to their credit. I mean, they were hitting the threes when they were there. Even guys who aren't normally shooting threes very well, like Justice Sueing. I think he was like a 20-some% shooter most of the season, although we've both thought that he's actually a much better shooter, just hasn't worked for him this year. But today he was on, and he's what really, I think, really propelled them in the first half. That and Bruce Thornton, who is really coming on at the end of the season.
I think I tweeted this out after the game. It's one thing to miss shots. That happens. It particularly can happen to you when you're playing your first game in a tournament, playing in these kind of venues, like the United Center. It is a little different than Big Ten arenas. So it's not the first time we've seen that, and it won't be the last. But when you can't match the energy and the toughness of a team playing its third game in 3 days, down 2 starters, down Zed Key, down Brice Sensabaugh, their leading scorer, who did not play today because of a knee injury, and you never do anything to make that team feel the least bit uncomfortable, that is a problem. That is the thing you didn't want to see. I don't really care that. I mean, the Big Ten tournament is nice to win. There are years where it feels more important than others. And typically that's in a scenario where I feel like Michigan State is trying to validate something. So like a year where they're a co-champion in the conference, for example, and there have been lots of those instances. So this was not one of those years. It doesn't bother me strictly from that perspective, because it doesn't really matter that much. Although we'll see if it matters on the seeding line. I'm going to be interested to see, that's the one downside here. And we may be actually at the end of everything being grateful that Ohio State was still ranked relatively decently in the metrics, because
Yes.
it's possible this loss could tip MSU to an 8, but you can hope it doesn't, because Ohio State has actually not only weren't in terrible shape entering this tournament relative to their record, what your expectations might be, but they've done themselves a lot of good. Certainly in beating Iowa and Michigan State the last 2 days, they have to have. So
sure, yeah.
That part anyway, the lack of an ability to match that team's energy, shorthanded and young and inexperienced, all of those things, that's the part that made it very, very difficult to watch. And that manifested itself on both ends of the court. Defensively, look, you can say with some justification that Ohio State did hit a lot of tough shots. They did. But I think the fact that Michigan State did very little to ever make them feel uncomfortable in running their stuff, did a very poor job in dribble denial. That had a lot to do with Ohio State getting to the point that they were in a spot where they would make some of those contested shots. So when MSU did contest, they were already in a rhythm. And you're right. You had guys. I mean, to see Suing and Roddy Gale just torch them. That's not anything you expect coming into a game, no question. But it happens sometimes. And if it was just one of those things, I say, okay, it's just one of those things. But I really felt like Michigan State heavily contributed to this. Defensively, just not where they needed to be. Izzo in the post game said they had just had 3 great days of practice. That's the old, kiss of death. But that they had been really good, and they came out and were not good today defensively. And then offensively, man, we could certainly talk about the threes, and it's an obvious thing to say that when Michigan State doesn't get production from 3, they struggle to score. Okay, truth. But a bigger point is when AJ Hoggard is not dialed in and he is not playing the way he needs to get the entire offense moving, they're going to struggle. And that's what happened today. AJ had a terrible game. I know he hit some shots late, and I don't know how much of it you saw at the United Center, but he spent some lengthy stretches on the bench,
a lot,
and he had Izzo talking to him. That wasn't just sit down on the bench and think about things. That was a 2-way conversation going on for a lot of that, particularly the stretch in the second half. But look, that's just the bottom line, and we've been saying it more or less all year. They're going to go as far as they go based on the play of AJ Hoggard. If he is like he had been for most of the last 3 weeks, they can hang with anybody. If he plays like tonight, they could easily go out the first game next week. I mean, it's just that simple. He has got to be better. And I don't mean scoring. That's the last thing I mean. He was not good defensively. Offensively, he wasn't getting into the teeth of Ohio State's defense. He wasn't making Ohio State make choices. He wasn't making smart plays. He wasn't making anybody else better. That's really it. The decision-making was bad. The intensity was lacking. There's just not much more to say. And so as a function of that, you really didn't have anybody get going. I would say Joey Hauser is the one guy who did the most to step up and play. Malik Hall had one of those days, just a bad day. He really struggled to do anything. Jaden was okay. Tyson was okay, not great. And, I would say actually the other guy other than Joey who can feel good about the game he played today, I think was Mario. That's about it. That's where it ends.
He was pretty good. But yep.
I thought a big moment in the game, and look, there was a ton of time left, so you can't say, well, that was it, but really did feel like a momentum backbreaker. Michigan State came out of the locker room down 9 at the half and immediately put a run on Ohio State. Got within 2.
Yep.
AJ made probably his best play of the game in finding Jackson Kohler on a slip screen. and Jackson just blew a layup, point blank. It would have tied the game. Michigan State would have continued its momentum. Instead, he blows the layup. Ohio State comes down. They bust a three. They get I think it was 2 threes because they had it back up to 8.
Yeah, back to back. It was back to 8
in a heartbeat. Yeah. And Michigan State never could get over the hump. There were a couple times they got it to 5 or 6, but they just couldn't ever get over the hump from there. And I do think that was the moment where I know for me, I felt like not our day. Whereas I think if he hits that layup and you tie it, look, there's no guarantee Ohio State still doesn't come down and bust those threes. But I think I would have liked to have seen Ohio State under that level of pressure where Michigan State had actually tied it and to see what happens from there. I'll give them credit. They are playing as well as I think this particular group of players is capable of playing right now. Because this wasn't just today. I mean, they took care of Iowa last night. They took care of Wisconsin fairly easily in the opener. They've won.
Yep.
What is it? They're 2. So they're 4-1. They're 5-1, I think, in their last 6. And the only loss was at Preston. So they've definitely found some things that work. I think their luck runs out tomorrow because I think trying to deal with Edey is just going to be another experience entirely, especially, and if they, so I assume they don't have Sensabaugh. I don't think they're winning it, but hats off to them. I mean, they came out and they looked like the more mature and more energetic and more forceful team. And when you do those things, you deserve to win, and they deserve to win.
Yeah, I guess as far as individual performers, the line speaks for itself as far as AJ 2 assists, 2 turnovers, Walker 2 assists, 2 turnovers. And I do think I was impressed with Madi that he brought some energy. He had that block, which was big, and that during that beginning part. But that's not a winning formula when you have such, I think, poor defense really, and that's what leads to their offense oftentimes, right? And the defense is really pretty shoddy, and then when you're not playing defense, you can't get the offense going, and then Ohio State felt comfortable. That's one thing I would say in the first half.
Unfortunately, the other way too. I go back to what Mike Garland has talked about when we've had him on the show, how teams that are offensively oriented, when they're not hitting shots, can start to go bad on the other end too. That it impacts that. It shouldn't.
Sure.
Michigan State as a program, its history is that does not happen very often. Usually, if they're playing poorly offensively, they're going to check even better to turn it into a slugfest and just try to eke it out, but win ugly, But this particular group, it's funny. They were very good defensively for most of the year when the offense was struggling, and it kept them in games, got them some wins. Now it had flipped. And then today, when the offense was not there, I think questionable defense was right back in town. I mean, it was stuff that you just missed assignments, just not communicating, just some really, really bad stuff. And then, just as I say, they just never found energy in this game. Just never came out and looked like they were going to be first to loose balls. They didn't get killed on the glass, but other than that, you can see that just watching the game, they were the slower team to react. Period. And that just should never happen. Yep. That just should not happen. You have a bad day, you miss some shots, you get beat that way. All right, fine. It happens. What we saw tonight or this afternoon, no, there's no excuse.
Yep, no, that's no question. And it was not for lack of attempts by the coaching staff to find a lineup that work or some sort of person to insert. And they tried everyone. They tried going small. They were going big. I mean, it didn't really matter what they did. It just wasn't working today for Michigan State, except for that 2 little brief spurts. And I would tell you from inside the United Center, that crowd was 90% Michigan State. I mean, it was that
you could hear
that
it.
Arena.
You could hear it.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It was ready for something, and Ohio State did a fantastic job of just the few times it got close, and there was they shut the crowd up, and there
was the start, at 7-2, and then there was the run in the first few minutes of the first half, and that was it.
I think they even got down to 6 with like 8 minutes left or something like that, and you thought, well,
they had it down
maybe
to 6 with
56
like
to 50, I think.
Yeah.
And then the crowd kind of got into it again, and then Ohio State scored a bucket. But again, all those times were after Michigan State had a chance to even cut it further, and they'd have a turnover or some really bad possession offensively. Yep. And then, Ohio State, or even they'd get a stop, and Ohio State would get an offensive rebound off out of bounds, or something like that. And they managed
there was one big segment where they were desperately looking for a stop, and the ball got batted around off about 3 guys, and the last one was Joey.
Yeah,
I don't blame him.
No,
it's just one of those things. But it was that was the story of the day. Just not making the plays that are there to be made. And so disappointing from that perspective, I think I mentioned this in our preview, the one thing about losing in the Big Ten tournament is, unlike the regular season, if you're already in the tournament,
you got another
at
game.
least there's a silver lining, not just that you have another game, but that, so we get a little more rest. I'm not sure that Michigan State needed rest. They just had, they were off. They played their last game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Maybe they had too much rest. I don't know. Sometimes that can happen. And look, this is me saying all these things. Do not interpret that to mean that I join the morons who immediately go to, oh, they're done. It doesn't. If any season should, I'm not just talking Michigan State, I mean everywhere. If any season should convince you of the fact that you cannot predict this stuff, you just never, there's nobody out there finds consistency. Nobody out there is in predictable scenarios. Just look at this Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
Just look at it.
Chalk, one win for Chalk, or 2 wins, I guess, for Chalk so far.
2 wins for Chalk, but even more than that, Rutgers comes into this tournament. They would have been the last team of maybe Minnesota you would have bet on to win a game the way they had played. They go out, they smack Michigan, and they gave Purdue everything they wanted today. So who would have seen that coming? Michigan State had offensively been red hot. What happens? It's not an excuse. I'm just saying that Michigan State could go out in their first game in the tournament and they could throw another stink bomb out there and lose, or they could play exceptionally well and win. Both are entirely possible outcomes.
Yeah.
And to think otherwise, you're not really paying attention. So what we're doing here is we're staying grounded in the reality of what we saw. That Michigan State playing that brand of basketball, forget about it. That won't get it done. That will not get it done. I don't care who they draw. That won't get it done.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust them against Alcorn State playing like that.
Maybe not. But the point is,
I understand.
Where they're going to be living in this thing. They're most likely going to see, I would bet, another high major. Because you figure the realistic possibilities now are a 7 and an 8. So they're either going to see a 9 seed or a 10 seed. Those are probably high majors that have struggled a bit.
Yep.
It won't be a Big Ten team because they don't do that in a first round matchup. But the problem, of course, with being on the 8-9 line as opposed to the 7 line is you are going to be, if you win that first game, you're going to be in a second round game against a 1 seed. Now, I've been saying all year, I do not believe the 1 seeds are anything close to what we normally expect from a 1 seed. And that is across the board. You can talk to me about Alabama. You can talk to me about Houston, Kansas. I don't buy it. So MSU could compete with all those teams and could even beat them potentially. But you would rather be playing a 2, most likely, all things being equal, But I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. They put themselves, with the way they played today, they put themselves in this spot. And this is the disadvantage to what our bracketologist, Dom, was telling us. You figure the committee saw that game today.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't think that means the world by any means. But if it's really close, as I suspect it's going to be, and Michigan State is right on a line with somebody else for a 7 or an 8, which is possible. That's not the right taste you want to leave in anybody's mouth, what they did today.
Right.
So that's the one thing that might be a little bit meaningful to come out of this loss from a Michigan State perspective. Other than that, it's just, look, those guys have to sit down and decide, what do we want to be? How do we want this season to be remembered? And this was not an encouraging step, but this isn't the end either. So they're going to have an opportunity to write another chapter, and we'll see if they can get it together. I mean, the biggest thing is just defensively. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is some bad defensive basketball, and it's been that way during this whole period that everybody's gotten excited about the offense getting better.
Right.
It correlates.
No question.
So make sense of that.
Well, let's have a quick little bracket discussion in just a moment after we come back from this ads.
The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. I love mixing it up by betting against the spread, taking the over on Giannis's points every chance I get, and more exclusive bets like the 2x3, 2 threes scored in the first 3 minutes. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine bets like those for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/BlueWire. That's FanDuel.com/BlueWire to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus in select states. First online real money wager only. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in New Jersey.
March Madness is here, and the best way to stay up to date on everything happening in the NCAA tournament is the Field of 68 After Dark. Join Rob Doster, Jeff Goodman, John Fanta, Tyler Hansbrough, and the rest of the Field of 68 crew as they break down brackets, upsets, and your favorite Cinderellas throughout the month of March. You can listen on SiriusXM Channel 84. You can stream it on the Field of 68 YouTube channel, or you can just search Field of 68 After Dark wherever you are listening to this Blue Wire podcast.
So I just want to remind you once again of the true sponsor of the show. If you want to support our show, a great way to do that is to support our sponsors. The first being Nudge Printing. Nudge Printing prints high-quality Spartan apparel and also other schools in Michigan and elsewhere. You can head over to nudgeprinting.com. I have a bunch of things. They're fantastic. I wore one yesterday, and highly recommend this. Screen printed. They're very soft, very wearable, both their sweatshirts and their t-shirts. They also have cool decals. I've got one on my computer right now as I'm holding here on the road show here for the Final Four is on the schedule. Head on over to nudgeprinting.com. You can select whatever you want. You get 20% off if you enter the coupon code Final4 at checkout. Also, if you have water problems, or maybe you're not sure if you have water problems, and you're out on the west side of the state, make sure you contact Kurt Stauffer and his team at the Brothers Just Do Gutters. They specialize in only doing gutter work, and they'll make sure your house stays nice and dry, at least around your house. And so check them out. You can go to kurt.stauffer at brothersgutters.com, or you can check out their link on the show notes to the podcast on your podcast player or on the website. Again, Kurt Stauffer, you can get 10% off if you say Final Four for your either gutter cleaning, repair, or replacement work. So just briefly about the brackets, looking at the seed list, I was just looking at just a second ago. And Michigan State was Dom, at least we've taught on the show a couple times at Bracket Dom. He has Michigan State as a 7 seed. And so the question really is, anyone below you in the 8 or 9, you're going to move you down into an 8. And so, looking at the 7s, he has Michigan State
and the other 7s too, because if he's right, and I've seen other people have it this way, Michigan State wasn't just a 7 seed; they were a high 7 seed.
Yeah, he has him as
so again,
the third.
We're assuming.
Yeah.
What's that?
Oh, I was just say he has Michigan State as the 27th team, which is the number 3-7.
I hadn't kept up.
So the only 7 seed lower is Missouri, and then the top 8 seed is Maryland. Well, they're done playing. The next 8 is Arkansas.
Well, no, Maryland's not done.
Oh no, that's right. They're not playing. They can still play.
They beat
Indiana.
Minnesota, so they're playing Indiana.
I'm assuming they've lost, which I shouldn't assume that.
We got a root for Indiana.
Right, and then so the 8s are Maryland, then Arkansas, then FAU, and FAU is still playing. They're going to be in the championship game of Conference USA. Iowa, and Iowa's done playing. Illinois, they're done playing. West Virginia, Boise, Memphis are the 9 seeds, and so I think all those teams are done as far as I'm aware.
That helps.
Yeah, so I think the question is going to be 7, 8, and this is such razor thin margins. It's going to be hard to know exactly. You won't know until obviously selection day. And I think whether you're an 8 or 9, I don't think it makes a difference except what color uniform you wear.
Right. No,
but I think to your point about the teams you're playing, I mean they're almost all high major teams. Providence, I guess you'd say, but that's a Big East team. So Providence, USC
counts.
USC's a Big Ten team, right? Penn State, Auburn, Memphis, Boise State, West Virginia. And these are all teams that are, like you said, these are all flawed teams. And this is going to be, I feel like this happens a lot of times in the tournament with Michigan State. Not that that's surprising because they're rarely like perfect teams, that there is a team that's, you don't know who team's going to show up. And you're like, well, this team could win a bunch in a row, or they could just flame out right away. And you don't know until you start, just like this tournament. You sort of make assumptions going in, and then you don't really know until the ball's tipped.
Yeah, and it's going to be a very simple equation for Michigan State in my mind. One, they've got to defend better. They've got to find their energy level and execution defensively. There's way too many moments where they're confused, where they're a half step late. Just that shouldn't be happening at this time of year, but that's something that has to happen. And then the second thing is, what AJ Hoggard are you getting?
Right.
Which one? If today was something that he takes to heart, then it's worth it. Because I would take, even if they dropped down a seed line, and they were 2 really, because they would have had a shot theoretically at a 6 had they made a run, I think. And that's not going to happen. So, but if this loss means AJ learned something, takes away from this, and next week we see the engaged AJ Hoggard, that's worth it, because the engaged AJ Hoggard means Michigan State can beat anyone. And I do mean anyone.
Yep.
That Michigan State can do that job. If they're checking, and if they have an AJ Hoggard playing the way he mostly has for about the last 3 weeks of the season before today, that's a team that can hang with anyone.
Yep.
So I'd take that. If they don't get those things, well, it ain't going to be a long stay.
It doesn't matter who they're playing at that point.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if
it just doesn't. I mean, Michigan State, they've got guys. I mean, Tyson Walker could go on a heater, even if AJ is off, and I guess sneak a win out against somebody, but they're not going to do anything memorable. Let's put it that way. But I just think this year anything is possible. And that goes both directions. We saw it today. You can get pretty much handled by a 13 seed, or you can go out and you could take out a 1 seed in a second round game. Those possibilities both exist, and they're each a long way from 0.
Yeah, I agree.
In terms of what could happen.
And I want to say too, and you look at the, if you want to, I guess depending on how you want to spin it, at some level, if you think your goal is to make a Final Four, let's say which is probably every season, that's probably the hope for a Michigan State team. Unless someone does the dirty work for you, you're going to have to take out a 1 or 2 seed at some point early in your run, right? If you're not the 1 or the 2. And so you can do it early or you can do it later. And so, if you're an 8 seed and you take out the 1 seed right away, well, then, now your path is clear, so to speak. So in some ways, it doesn't really matter that much because I guess you want to get to the Sweet 16 and they haven't been there a while. Not that that's usually a goal for this team, but it's something you hope sort of to make that second weekend. Since it's been it's been a couple of years since we've been in the Final Four. We've talked about this before. It's been all of 4 years and right. So
three tournaments.
This is the
third tournament.
Yeah. Well, actually 2 tournaments, right? Yeah. It's 2 tournaments. Not
well, this will be the third.
Right. This will be the third. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, people I get it. Michigan State has made a habit of going on these March runs. But I will say there have been years where this kind of performance has been an indicator of what we will see in March. And there have been years where they have, for all the times they've won the Big Ten tournament, there have been a lot of occasions where they flamed out
and still done well
early.
Yeah.
And then gone on. Now, I would say most of those teams I had a better feeling about than I did this one. Those were teams. It's happened sometimes where the team won the regular season in the Big Ten and then didn't play well in a quarterfinal game. That's happened. But I guess I'm just pointing out it's not necessarily a precursor for what's going to happen next week. This was a pretty wild one. A couple of streaks ended in this game, which those who watched it on TV probably realize, but they're worth mentioning, I guess. This is the first time that a team who played on Wednesday has gotten to the semifinal. Wow. They've gotten to the quarterfinals before. And it hasn't been going on that long because the Wednesday games, I believe, only started with the expansion to 14.
So it's 10 years, probably, right?
Is that right? Has it been that long?
Maryland?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Probably. Yeah.
I guess you're right. It's mighty close to that, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Rutgers and Maryland. But this is the first time it's happened. So Ohio State broke a streak in that way. This is also Michigan State 3 times previously in the Big Ten tournament had an 8-point deficit or at halftime or more at halftime. Yeah, I think so. And it was 3-0 in those games. They had come back and won all of them. That streak obviously ended. Believe me, I was thinking about it when they made that run out of halftime. Like, yep, here we go again. Didn't work out that way. But it's also one of those things that just from a purely basketball perspective, everybody got what they deserved today.
Yep.
You give great credit to Ohio State. I mean, their freshmen, even without Sensabaugh, maybe, I would say this.
Yeah, maybe
there
better.
There might be an argument, that they're better. And I think primarily that might be on the defensive end because Sensabaugh really struggled to guard people. I won't say it's quite a Jet Howard scenario, but it's probably closer to that than Ohio State people would like. And, look, if this is what it took to get Roddy Gale going and give him confidence to get these kind of minutes, it's going to be interesting to see Ohio State, regardless of what happens from here next season, because they're going to bring, I'm pretty sure Sensabaugh's gone, and they're going to lose some of these guys, Likely, McNeil, Sewing, those guys are all gone.
Yeah.
But they're going to have a core now. They can look at Thornton. They can look at Gale. They can look at Okpara. Zed Key, presumably back 100%. That could be a very good 1-2 punch at center. And then they're bringing in a very good freshman class. So I would imagine they're going to be back in the portal. And if they make a good addition or two, it's going to be interesting to see whether they can build on this, because right now, as an Ohio State fan, you would feel great about how the season has ended with your freshmen. I mean, Thornton's clearly elevated his game. Gale is finding himself as an impact player, and Okpara looks like at the very least, capable of forming a really good 1-2 punch.
Yep,
with Key. That's a great place to start. I mean, that takes care of your point guard. one wing spot and the 5, you're in pretty good shape. And the guys they recruited are all, forward wing types. So it'll be interesting to see if they carry it over. That would be the thing. But if you're an Ohio State fan, you have to feel pretty good about what you've seen over the last 2-3 weeks. It's put at least a little more positive spin on what was a really bad year.
Yeah, definitely a little bit more to look forward to. And heck, you're only 2 games away from a miracle and being the first team to make a tournament.
I don't think that's happening. But I am going to be, I'll tell you, the interesting thing, tonight's bracket, I am going to be very interested to see Penn State, Northwestern.
Yeah.
I mean, Northwestern's had an ability to snuff some of these games out with their defense, but I picked Penn State to get to the title game. I picked it Penn State against Purdue. And if Penn State can get past Northwestern, I think they're going to win the semi against either Maryland or IU.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and squeeze out of here and head down to the United Center, catch the evening matchup. It's not as much fun without your teams playing, but it is what it is. And I do enjoy the basketball in general. I know all the players, so it makes it a lot more enjoyable than going to some random, basketball tournament. So a couple quick programming notes. First, we are having, we'll be back we'll have a bracket show probably Sunday night, right? Or Sunday or
Yep.
Monday
Sunday
will come
night.
out. I'm not sure when. Depends when we get it recorded and all that stuff. And I think we're going to try and have Dom on to help to go over the brackets as well a little bit. And then also, we are going to have a bracket challenge. There'll be a couple prizes. We'll see how many people enter. But our plan would be to have a hoodie and a couple T-shirts as prizes for the top picks. You'll be able to do that. We're going to use the ESPN site just because it's the easiest. So if you don't, you'll have to have an ESPN account, but it's free. That link will be available on our website soon. And then also, you can actually sign up right now at TFFINOTS. Just search for that in the bracket challenge or the tournament challenge for ESPN, and you can find it there. Rob will be making his picks. I'll be making picks. Basically, anyone is welcome to join and sort of have a lot of fun. Hopefully, Michigan State makes a little bit of run too. But I guess I'll get out of here and head back down to watch some basketball. Unfortunately, not watching Michigan State anymore. I guess I'll just keep wearing my green, I suppose. So until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go green.
March Madness is here, and the Sports Gambling Podcast has you covered. We've got daily shows from Las Vegas where we're picking every game against the spread, helping you dominate your bracket. Plus, we got our free March Madness bankroll contest where you can win $1,000 in cash and prizes. Best part is all of our picks and contests are completely free. So subscribe to the Sports Gambling Podcast, and don't forget to let it ride.